Lane, are you taking notes for Nancy?
I can.
Or is the recording okay, right?
The recording is okay. I usually jot just at least who was present. So.
Right.
Okay, you're live.
Okay. Right. Welcome to our special joint board meeting, called to order at 5:08 on Wednesday, August 12th. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. Just reports and discussion, and obviously we're all here to listen to Lane to find out what our plan is to reopen the school year and possible stuff changes throughout the year.
All right. Well, I have a brief PowerPoint to kind of give context to everything, because I know a lot of stuff has changed, a lot of definitions, or there's a lot of abbreviations. So feel free to stop me if it's not clear. It's tough when you've been thrown into something to remember what everybody else doesn't know about it. So if there's any holes as I'm going through, please ask. So let's see here. Jason, can I do screen sharing? I've got this PowerPoint I want to show.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So then, does everybody see the green background? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so just to get down to it, what's the plan? So we currently plan to begin the year online and comprehensive distance learning. So everybody will be online to start, at least for the first month. So why? So until yesterday, state guidance only prevented almost all schools in Oregon from opening on campus. So there were some exceptions, and we would have been eligible to bring back K3 students based on feedback, and then the logistics. We felt it would be best to start everybody online to help keep our students, staff, and community safe and healthy. So as we go through, kind of talk about the plans are, just remember, like, this is our best thinking right now. It will change based on the changing situation. We care about people being safe and healthy. We're all working together. We want to make sure students have an opportunity to learn, they stay safe. We'll do better as we learn more about this. I know, like, the spring, we learned a lot about how to do online learning. And I know, teachers and admin and other support staff learned a lot from that. And we know that we'll be able to do better coming into the fall. I think, honestly, I think our staff did a really good job in a really bad situation. And, my hat's off to them for bringing it home in the spring. Really, the primary tool to help keep our kids safe is physical distancing and proper hygiene. And really, we're still in the risk reduction stage of this. There's no cure. There's no really super effective treatment. There's no immunization. Really, the thing we know that keeps people from getting it is staying away from other people, and especially other people who have it. And then being flexible. Health metrics are changing. State guidance is changing. Yesterday we had a big change. And we don't know how long it'll take for there to be some sort of immunity and some sort of solution to this. So we might be doing this dance online, on site, back online, back on site for a few months now. Okay, so Oregon allowed in its framework, these operational blueprints, every school in the state is required to do these, and that includes private schools. So that we had 3 models to choose from: the on-site model, hybrid model, and the comprehensive distance learning. So to be honest with you, when we first started talking about this, we thought, okay, well, we should be able to get everybody on site. We're small, class sizes are small. We don't have that many kids. But then when logistics really raised its head with some of the requirements with the 35 square feet a person per room, that made it really obvious that we can't do that. So then we started to look at the hybrid model. We were planning to start the year hybrid, and then the guidance before yesterday's guidance pretty much set the bar that no one will return to campus in the state until we get a state test positivity rate below 5%. So then we started looking again at the comprehensive distance learning plan. And that's kind of where we are at right now. So what is comprehensive distance learning? Students are doing remote instruction. We can have some limited in-person supports. It's going to be more robust than that emergency learning that we did last spring. There'll be grades. It'll be more what you would imagine you would get on site, just facilitated online. Increased demands for the teacher facilitated instruction time. So they provided guidance, and it's about the minimum for each grade at like the lowest end is, about 2 hours, 20 minutes for kindergartners, all the way up to 2 hours and 50 minutes for the 9th through 11th graders. So that requirement has really expanded. We want to have more opportunities for some real-time connections. Attendance, like I mentioned, will be taken. Grades will be given. We're hoping by building a good foundation online, that when we go back in person, we'll be able to use those tools as well. And then we'll be ready to pivot if we need to go back home and back online really easy. And, I got to tip my hat. There's, a few staff members, Corey Culp, Corey Christensen, Brent Meister, Rebecca Harshbarger, Mike Abrams. There's been a core group of staff who have worked a lot over the summer about thinking about ways we can make this work and figure out logistics. And so I really just want to, note the appreciation from, the district and then me personally for how much time and effort they've put in helping us figure out the specifics and continuing to help figure out specifics as things change. So you guys have a good team. Okay, so here's the state rules for being able to reopen schools to students online. Just want to show you, we do have a website. If you look on the website, there's a tab called Reopening Schools. And there you'll be able to find the metrics that I'm showing you. Okay, so this one, when we finished presenting this and when we turn it into ODE, I'll post our blueprint here. There's the most current ready learners, safe learners guidance. And then here we'll look at those rates. Let me come back to the presentation and then we'll jump back there. So in order for everybody to come back, the state, we have to have for 3 weeks in a row, less than 10 positive case per 100,000 population in Lane County, less than 5% positive results in tests in Lane County, and then less than 5% positive results in COVID-19 just in the state in general. So those 3 things have to be in place for the past 3 weeks. So if we go back to these metrics, and sorry, those are kind of small, guys. So in Oregon, if you look at the positivity rate, we are been floating anywhere from 6, almost 6.5 to now we're about 5.5% positivity. So since that one condition is not met, we can't return everybody to campus. That makes sense? Okay, and then you can also scroll down when we get into the county specifics. Lane County in general, we are looking like we meet on both. So Lane County has done a good job of keeping things contained. And the only thing that would really be stopping Lane County schools from reopening is that statewide percentage of the test positivity. This is posted every Monday by OHA and ODE. So that's there so if you want to reference and take a look. Okay. So then there are some metrics that would allow K through 3 and limited instruction to occur. So if we're under 30 new new positive cases per 100,000 and below 5% positive results in the county, and then the school community itself, like the student body and the staff, aren't spreading, we can open for K3. And that was that exception I mentioned in the Y slide earlier. We also have to have metrics in for when we start thinking about returning to distance learning, should we have classes on site. So if we start seeing those numbers start to increase over 20 per 100, and then the test positivity rate is over 7.5, we need to start planning to go back to comprehensive distance learning. And then we are required to start back up to comprehensive distance learning if we have over 30 cases per 100,000 and the test positivity rate gets up to 10%. So hopefully we don't get there, but know that those transition waypoints are built into this plan. Now, so like I mentioned, some of these exceptions, because Oregon's pretty diverse, population-wise, geographically, they built in some of these exceptions. So the first exception is we can provide in-person education for students K through 3 if there have been no confirmed cases within the students or staff, county rate is less than 30 for the previous 7 days, test positivity rate is less than 5, and then we comply with sections 1 through 3 on the Ready Schools guidance. So those were the first 3 sections in that second, the hybrid blueprint that I sent to you. We have to make sure that as soon as we have kids on campus, we're prepared to follow those. So we meet that first exception. Can also provide limited in-person instruction statewide if there's no spread within the faculty or students within the past 14 days, that we comply with sections 1 through 3, and that we follow the guidance tied to comprehensive distance learning and then the in-person learning that goes with it. There's some cohort size limits, time limits, like we can only have groups of 10 together. They can only be here for 2 hours at most. And then all the other spacing things that go with it. So this exception was one of the original exceptions they talked about, the K3. This limited in-person instruction was something that we got yesterday. So this is all new. So, while we're doing CDL, if we're noticing that there's a group of kids that are having a hard time accessing the internet or need other support, ELL students, CTE students that need to get on campus, we can plan and do logistics to do that as well. Here's
Lane. Hey,
yes,
Lane, can you? I'm a little confused. Can you address exactly the whys of the K through 3 opposed to 4 through 6 or whatever? Is it just because they do better, or anyway? What's the why for that?
Couple whys. They're going off of research that shows that infection rates seem to be lower on kids that are 10 and under, and that there hasn't been strong evidence showing that they spread it as much as kids 10 and older are. There's also the younger students will have a harder time learning and developing things online as opposed to face-to-face in person And I agree with that point, that it's going to be tough for some of these kids to build some literacy and numeracy when they're trying to do it through a computer.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so here's the new one. So that schools can bring people back if they live in a bigger county, and have a population density of more than 6 per square mile, if there's no confirmed cases, that the case rate is under 30 again, test positivity rate is below 5%, that the enrollment of the school is less than 250 students, and only less than 10% of them come from outside the school's attendance area, that they're remote, and that they're rural, and that you comply with sections 1 through 3 of the Ready Schools Safe Learners guidance. This was a change. Initially, it was 100 students. When asked why there was a shift from 100 students to 250 students, we were told it was because that's what the public health had was comfortable potentially having to do contact tracing for. So this kind of put a wrinkle in some of our thoughts about our, starting in CDL and kind of our timeline to then transition into hybrid. So it's something we can talk more about. I do think our students and our families need to know what the plan is going to be, and I think the starting out online just makes sense to help keep everybody safe. One of the things they did talk about was consider, communities that are kind of like bedroom communities. So like I know a lot of this change came from rural schools in Eastern Oregon that are, far away from everything. They don't have a lot of movement between different towns. I'm a little concerned for us personally because a lot of our families either work in Eugene, Springfield, shop in Eugene, Springfield, recreate in Eugene, Springfield, and then we also have staff that come from Eugene, Springfield up to our site. So I do think moving into having everybody there on campus at once, we should do measured and work our way into. So this was a new change that really surprised me, but well, it's good to know that we have options.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah. Yep.
So what happens if we meet the metrics and then we make the decision to start moving towards in-person? We're meeting in person for a week and then we have a big spike. Like at that point, do we have to move back to all online? I mean, so that, yeah, that, yeah.
Kind of if we see like a statewide spike and a countywide spike, then we would start mobilizing to get people back online.
Mm-hmm.
Based on these metrics.
So Lane,
Yes, sir.
on these metrics, it's dependent upon everybody getting tested. And so in our case, we're not going to be testing at school. And what's going to end up, my presumption is that as people get sick is when they're going to get tested in town.
Mm-hmm.
We'll know kind of after the fact of whether or not we're going to be meeting the metrics or not.
Yes, and then exactly. And then this is just based off of countywide data. You can't get data. So part of there's two other exceptions that we don't fit because we're not in a sparsely populated county, or our district's not below 75 students, but those smaller counties, they have to have the health authority sign off on it based on their like local data. We can't get our local data. So like if you look, What they know now, it looks like in 97413, there hasn't been a reported case yet. And then same in, let's say, 97488, I think there's between 1 and 9 cases. So when you look at our local data, you'd think that we're in good shape. But I think because our families and communities pretty transient between, upriver, Eugene, Greater Lane County, I do think the county-wide numbers hold a little bit more weight, because besides the clinic, there's really no one doing any other testing up here either.
Right, and then the state numbers really are somewhat dependent on the Portland metro area, because that's where a huge amount of cases are. So that 5% rule would probably follow the Portland metro area, wouldn't it?
Yes, but then if you look, you appreciate your numbers guy, like if you look back at that these metrics that I had open,
Yeah.
like some of the places that are more hard hit are a lot of those thinly populated states or counties. So let me see if I can look.
Oh, out in East Oregon, you mean?
Yeah. So if you look at like, Gillum County, 10% positivity rate, but that's like one case.
Right.
So I think some of that weighs a little more heavily on that percentage. Hood River, they have 5.9. Who's this with 16? So Jefferson County. The only one that I think that's good to go across the board is Wheeler County. And Wheeler has no cases. So there's not a whole lot happening in Wheeler County. Wheeler County is beautiful. There's great people there. There's just not a whole lot of them there. So yeah, I do think, because I forget, like we forget in Lane County, like we're on phase 2, which is pretty open. There's still some counties that are still on that baseline lockdown phase, and then the phase 1 phase, which doesn't allow them to access as many things as we can. So
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's that exception. So then I sent out, so out of those 3 links, one of them was the communicable disease management plan. And it's a requirement for when we start having students on site. We have to speak to mitigation. We have to speak to our facilities operations, transportation operations, how we're going to respond to confirmed cases and outbreaks, how we're going to train people, how we're going to communicate, and then also some other guidance. So this will be shared with Lane County Public Health. They'll vet it and review it and give us guidance. And thanks to Tia Cloak down at Orchid McKenzie River Clinic, she took a peek as our local medical professional. And so you guys, I'm sure you guys have already all opened it up, but there's just about any kind of COVID related topic is there, requiring face coverings, how we're going to do the contact tracing, how we're going to screen students as they come in. I know a lot of places do the temperature check at the door. We won't be doing that. We're working with Lane County. They provided a questionnaire, screening, and then kind of some training videos. So that'll be a nice resource to be able to share with folks as we get back. Cohorting is big. We can't have anybody member of a group over 50, but then cohort is any group that's together. So we need to be able to log that, trace that, and if there should be an outbreak, report that to Lane County Public Health. And then they'll come through our logs and figure out where those contacts would have been. We have to hold on to those logs for about a month. We have to set up like your isolation. We have to set up an isolation room. That'll be the back office in the elementary, because it's easily, that elementary office, it's easily supervised through the window. So yeah, jump in and take a look at this when you guys have some time. Sorry I didn't get it out to you sooner, but then in light of the changes, the shift in the guidance yesterday, I had to do some updates.
Hey, Lane, I have a question.
Yeah.
On that temperature thing, is that just a logistical thing, or is that, you figure that's, I mean, the reason I ask is because in the last 2 or 3 weeks, Robert and I have each been, to see the doctor on totally unrelated to COVID things. In fact, Robin tore her meniscus on her left knee, and anyway, it just seems so simple. I just wondered if what's the reason for not doing that? Is it money, or is it time, or is it fun?
I think a little bit of that. I think the research is showing that that's not necessarily a good predictor, a good indicator. I think a lot of times when we go to places and they do that to make us feel better.
Oh, very well could be. I mean, I know every place, I mean, even where I went with Robin, obviously, then that's first thing they're doing at the clinics, and we go to Oregon Medical Group, and it's like, yep, temperature. I just went yesterday, and it's like, here we go, temperature. Okay, you're good. Come on in. It's like if you weren't, then you'd be kicked out. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
And it should be. I think they're getting more valid indicators, because it's not just taking the temperature, right? It's then they ask you, have you had shortness of breath, cough? Have you been around somebody who's a known exposure? I think those questions, the screening questions, I think they're finding is a better
Sure.
predictor and indicator.
Well, it did make me wonder, because they're also saying that, especially with younger people, like the age of most of my grandkids, that they can have it and be asymptomatic. So then it did make me wonder, well, then what good's the temperature thing if my 16-year-old granddaughter has it, but she's showing no symptoms? So I know it's all very difficult to understand, but yeah, that's a good explanation. It's just that, like I said, in the last 3 weeks, we've been 2 or 3, 4 times, and okay, temperature, and okay, fine.
That was when we were still in the NICU with Nathaniel.
Mm-hmm.
That was how we started our day. Was we go in, take temperature, and then the hospital, they give you a little sticker, so that way no one bugs you. It only took them like 3 weeks to figure out that they should give you a sticker, so that way you don't get harassed every time you walk by.
Wow.
So
yeah,
it's I think it's just logistics, and
yeah, good enough. Sure.
It's not a very good predictor.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
So then that management plan that we put together. So if you looked at the hybrid operational framework, you'll notice there was just a lot of links back to it, to this communicable disease management plan. So this is really kind of the backbone of what our educational process will then be tied back to, and how we make sure students are safe, staff are safe. Visitors we're not going to have, so if they're safe, that's up to them somewhere else. So as you go through that over the next few days, or anytime, if there's any questions, feel free to email, text, call, and I'd love to talk more about it, because the more you talk about it, the more you figure it out. So right now, what we're looking at is to give people some certainty and stability, staff, families. We're going to be looking at going online at least through the month of September. Based on the trends of the public health conditions, we'll make decisions and communicate those in advance to get folks ready to go out. So what we'll do is that first week that we were originally supposed to come back will be kind of a week of welcome, where we'll have staff reach out to families to work with them about how to work with the platform, talk a little bit more about what the year is going to look like. First step is just checking in to see how people's summers were, how everybody's doing. So that'll be those days, the 8th, 9th, and 10th. And then we'll have classes starting on August 14th online. So each Monday when we get the new ODE, OHA COVID data, we'll get together and look at those and then communicate the changes and trends to families and then hopefully make a decision. And then fingers crossed.
Elaine, am I reading that right?
Go ahead.
Am I seeing that right? It does say August 10th, 8th through 10th, right? Is that just typo?
Oh, it's a typo. I'm sorry. Because we would already
We're
been
starting early.
missed it. Dang. Yeah, good catch. And then hopefully that maybe October 5th would be the first day of maybe coming back to hybrid. So then those positive trends, they'll lead to some family choice. So then, you know, as we transition back to campus, folks will have a choice to remain online. If they don't feel safe, that's required. So I'm currently working with some online vendors to find what would be the best, most effective tool. You know, but if we're hearing as we check in with folks next week, and then as we continue to check in with folks that week of welcome, if they're saying to us, you know, the overwhelming majority of folks are saying they're going to come back and we only have a couple, you know, kids, we might be able to continue in that CDL format that we were working with their current teacher and classmates. And I think that would allow them to be able to, you know, stream in and then still have some social connection with their peers should they choose to go that route. So this piece is still kind of taking shape. You know, we're not a 4J where we can go and say, well, we figure we're going to have, you know, 100 kids at least and set up a whole different online program, unless we have that need, and then we can. So I don't necessarily want to speak to, you know, resources, either monetary or people's time, until we know a little bit more about what the demand will be for that.
So, question.
So, Lane?
Can you?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Tim, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, James.
Okay. So can you tell me how that's going to work if a student's online and then they go to school? Is the in class, and I'll throw out Nate Day just because his name comes to my mind. So if he's got a class going and he's got some in class, some online, are they following the same curriculum at the same schedule so that if they do get mixed, they're seamless? Or is there going to be a crossover? I'm not sure I'm stating that right, but you know, I guess I'm concerned that if
like, so then yes, that would be the intent. And I think, like, especially in the secondary classes, because we'd be doing the hybrid alternating days, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, that it would be easier to do at that level, because you would just have them watch your lecture and access it through Google Classroom like you've been doing for the whole month of September. In the elementaries, where I've got kind of some concerns about staff capacity to teach the students in the classroom while trying to find ways to support students who are outside the classroom. So that's kind of what we're fleshing out. But yeah, the idea in the middle high would be that they would just continue to access the same lessons that the students in class are, just through video.
all right. So it's not going to be a like Zoom interactive. It's going to be a pre-recorded.
No, I think like the intent with the comprehensive distance is to have teachers do synchronous presentations of content, and then say a student misses and is sick, they'd be able to go back and watch the video.
Okay.
You know. So this is still in flux a little bit. So then what's hybrid learning? I've talked a little bit about it. So due to our physical distancing rules, having 35 square feet per person, we won't be able to have everybody back at once. We were really surprised that, you know, some of our classrooms could only hold 16 people with that. It's kind of an eye opener. And that's including the teacher. So if we're going to have, you know, a traditional, you know, teacher desk might take up more room, or anything you put in the space taking up space reduces the amount of square footage a person could access. So the hybrid model, splitting the students into 2 groups, and then naturally up the McKenzie, what are the 2 groups? Anybody? Lacey, you're a native. What are the 2 groups?
Upper and lower.
Yep, up
Yeah,
river, down river.
upper and downriver. Luckily, Patience is upriver people. That was McKenzie Bridge. No. So looking what, so that, it wouldn't necessarily be like upriver, downriver from the school, but it would be trying to find the best place to kind of split the district into 2 groups. We've played around a little bit with it, and kind of that Nimrod area is a good place. And then you'd have about the similar size classes, and then I was actually surprised at how equally it shook out per grade in the elementary. Those, some class, there'll be, a downriver cohort might be a little bit bigger in 3rd grade than the downriver cohort in 5th grade, but it balances out pretty well. So, they have, the upriver cohort, for example, would be on campus Monday, Tuesday. Then they would go home Wednesday, Thursday, and access their courses online. And then on, Wednesday, Thursday, the downriver cohort will be up and going through. So having smaller cohorts leads to better protection, risk minimization, and then we're better able to follow the physical distancing rules. Because, we could theoretically have everybody outside and not worry about the physical distancing tied to the classroom per se, but then how fall really goes really quickly in the winter, and it'd be pretty cool. So that's hybrid. There'll be more details fleshed out as we get closer to different bus routes and down to all of that, because of the buses would only be with distancing rules. If we kept the 6-foot rule, you get about 6 kids on a traditional 70-person bus. If you did the 3 feet spacing, you can get about 28. So we'll see if we're able to break it into family cohorts. They can sit together, so we might be able to make it work a little bit better. But I think, if you have 220 kids, divide that in half. 110, divide that by 3 with our 3 bus routes, with our 3 drivers, we should be really close to getting the kids on at that 3-foot spacing.
So will the state continue to help pay for transportation if we have to add buses? So we don't have to worry too much about that?
No, I think, we get reimbursed at our similar rate. Really the only thing that worries me a little bit about transportation is making sure we have enough drivers. And that's what we've been dealing with the last, not that I know anything about, I think as far as I know, all of our drivers are ready and willing and able. That's the last I've heard. But
Can I ask can I ask something about the transportation piece of it?
Yep.
So how or why is that different from rules that govern public transportation? Because public transportation is still happening. And, if transmission rates are higher in adults than they maybe are for kids, it seems like we might have some flexibility with that. And I ask partly because, we have, as you know, a number of vehicles that don't require CDLs and that are fully insured, and we're happy to help out with those if that's helpful. But I'm not understanding why with kids, if transmission rates are lower, then why do we have to stick to the 6 or 3 foot? I mean, I'm not, anyway. So I'm just basically what I'm saying is if there's a way that we can be helpful with all of our vehicles, we're happy to help.
Well, I think so I think part of it's kind of like optics. If you think of if you close your eyes and you think about what a school bus looks like, you're usually thinking crowded, close, kids being kids. So I think, and I also think that kids getting on a school bus has less choice in it than an adult choosing to go on to the LTD or on a shuttle somewhere. So I think that's part of it, but that's where ODE and OHA's science has led them to get to. And we've gone a long way. They were initially just sticking with the 6 foot until somebody said, "Oh, well, you're not gonna be able to transport anybody. That's all. It's an expensive way to transport 6 kids to run a full bus like that." So I can look into that. We have twice a week phone calls with Lane County Public Health, so I can ask that question and see what their take on it is, and then I can also ask ODE for more clarification.
I'm really, I mean, really my main thing is like, if there's a way that we can be helpful with all of our vehicles because they're 15 passenger, let me know, but don't worry about trying to dig into this if it's not going to be helpful. So yeah, I would say don't spend your time, but if there's something we can do to help, just let me know.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yep.
So I saw not necessarily any of the other districts in like 4J or whatever, but I have seen on a couple of other places where they're splitting the school week up so that middle day is the sanitation day and all that other stuff. Is that not something that we can do? Because I mean, I know the janitor, and they're already going to have a whole ton of extra that they're going to have to be doing. And so trying to get all of the extra sanitation and stuff done on top of regular stuff between those 2 days without having like just a day where there's not going to be anybody extra. I mean, is that not something, and still only doing a 4-day school week, but having that 1 day in the middle being like Friday instead of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's something we've talked about, but haven't pinned down to making that the way it is. We'd have to figure out. It's totally doable. We'd have to talk with the associations and get an MOU, which we're going to have to do anyways with some of the stuff that we're doing. So it's something that we can bring up and talk about again.
Okay. I mean, obviously I have a little bit of a different stake in it, but I'm just curious for their sake and for everybody else's too.
Yeah, there's going to be, like, if you look at the disease plan, and then you look at the cleaning requirements, we're going to have more people than them cleaning regularly, even between cohorts. So I think, it's doable, but I do think having that day wouldn't be a bad idea. So I can bring that up again.
Lane?
Yes, sir.
So have we looking at cohorts A and B, upriver, downriver, looking at the different subgroup populations, if there's any major differences upriver, downriver, specifically for special education or homeless students?
I haven't broken it out that far.
I think it'd just be interesting for teachers to know. I mean, if I'm going to have a class with 10 special ed kids in it, that happens to be upriver rather than downriver, then as a teacher, that would be even more challenging and have different kinds of preparation for that. We
will relook at that when we get into breaking down the different cohort groups and putting those lists together. That's a great point. I do think, like, what we've found just through working with the data over the years is it's not so much a up and down divide, it's a left and right. So I think that
would make sense.
Yeah. So, like, we see a breakdown between which side of the highway you're on, which is kind of interesting, as opposed to which part.
Good. That would work in our favor.
Theoretically, but we do need to sit down and put all the kids up on a big board and break it down even more granularly, because what if we are, even if we're unknowingly singling out a group based on something that we didn't realize, then we're still doing it. So that's a good point to make sure we're treading lightly and making sure we're being equitable
as best as we can.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So this is just still pretty big high level stuff, and we have staff, like I mentioned, working to drill down a little bit more. So this will take better shape as we get closer to the start of school. But in the elementary, what it'll look like, we are required to have what they call teacher facilitated learning. On average in each of those grades in elementary, right around 2.5 hours each day. So then you can also include time for things they're calling applied learning, nutrition, which is lunch, and then wellness, which is exercise. So teacher facilitated learning can be, like a Zoom meeting that's totally synchronous, live with kids asking questions, but it can also be asynchronous things that is teacher designed activities and instruction. We're going to have students will have opportunities to connect with staff each day. It'll be more, I know in the middle high, it was mostly office hours. This will be more each day. There's going to be some synchronous connections and learning, then fleshed out by some of those asynchronous teacher designed activities that will extend that learning. We want to have the week welcome, like we talked about, orient the students and families to the virtual tools and procedures that we have. And then we'll continue to conference with families as continue to be in the CDL, the distance learning. We'll be using Google Classroom again. Google Classroom isn't necessarily the most perfect tool, but it's a tool that we know how to use. And I think that our staff know how to use it well. Families know how to access it and use it. And with a little bit more support in the fall, I think it'd be easier to get to speed on it than learning a totally new learning management platform. So I'll keep you tuned. We'll see how we feel about Google Classroom at the end of the year. But right now, that's what we're going to stick to, and in the elementary and in the middle high. So what does it look like in the middle high? Same thing. It's 2.5 hours each day. And I believe it's, let me pull that up, guys. When you get into the high school, we're required to give 2 hours, 50 minutes per day in that teacher facilitated learning. So that will be, we'll have a 4-period day. Sorry, I take my notes off the screen and I totally get lost. Sorry. So we're going to transition from a 7-period day to a 4-period day. And the big driver on that was wanting to reduce the amount of transitions that students have each day when we get on site. And it also allows students and teachers to focus on, a narrowed set of preps and classes for students to be in. Yes, we're going to do a 4x4. So first semester, you'll get 1 credit, and second semester, you'll get your other credit. So we'll actually end up being able to grant another credit on top of what we've been doing each year. So it's a trial. We'll see how it works out. But I think it'll allow students and staff to kind of narrow that focus, because the 7-period day can be pretty chaotic. So these classes will be graded, not pass, no pass like they were in the spring, but we'll make sure there's flexibility built in to help support students to make sure they're successful as they can be. We really need to do a decent job of, doing our attendance and seeing who's engaging and who's not, and then trying to find ways to re-engage students that aren't able to keep up with it.
Lane, can
Sure.
you elaborate a little bit on the flexibility as far as grading? I admit this last year, even though, both my kids went through it, I didn't like the way that worked out. There was really a lack of accountability for the students. How is, again, our objective when it all comes down to is our kids are safe and they're learning.
Mhm.
How are we ensuring they're learning flexibility? Does that mean, well, you
Well, I
tried,
think-
so I'm going to give you your grade, even though you didn't understand it?
Yeah, well, that's what, see, and that's exactly it. So it comes down to, we got to make sure that we're grading based on content attainment as opposed to being able to comply to commands. Like, I don't know, that's not the best way to say it, but we want to make sure, like, when we're grading students, we're grading students on, did you get the content, the key points that we're trying to get, and not just you're getting a good grade because you were in every Zoom meeting and you were able to fully engage with every sort of thing that we asked you to.
'Cause, I'm sure every one of us want to ensure our students are, we all know every student doesn't go to college, but those who want to, we want to make sure they're as prepared as we can possibly make them.
Yep. No, I agree. So yeah, it's not going to be are you there? You get a pass.
Okay, that's good.
But it'll be, you need to participate. You need to be a part of the class. You need to get the content when we're assessing you, and we'll get grades from there. And those are still some discussions that we're going to have with staff as we get closer. So we were supposed to return with staff that last week of August, but through the implementation grant and some other resources, we're going to have some staff members teaching staff come in the week before and get some other professional development and time to flesh out things like this.
Another question I have, you probably can't even answer it yet, is, last year they waived the state testing. Is there any preliminary ideas if that's going to happen again? I mean, do we need to focus on that?
No, and I think I was rereading the distance learning guidance, and they do talk about the balanced assessments.
Okay.
So yeah, I think preparing for those and knowing that those are coming is going to be something that we're going to have to do, and they are setting it up so it can be done remotely. So we'll see how that goes. So that would be one that right now I think tentatively yes, but then just to stay tuned. We'll see how the year goes to see if there's any changes from the state on that end.
That sounds like that's going to blow up in their face to try that. Just me thinking that.
So we will have, like we talked about, that week of welcome, of that orientation, and Google Classroom will be used for the learning management system. So that's, in a nutshell, what we will be doing. Let's see, how do I stop screen sharing?
So I have a couple questions about stuff you didn't cover.
Okay.
So the first one is talking about staff safety. And is there a way that we could work with ORCID to maybe do, if either teachers or classified want to be tested, let's just say on a weekly basis, can we work with ORCID to do something like that? And I'm mostly concerned about staff members that might be 45, 50 years old plus, that statistically they've got more of a probability of, or a higher probability of getting sick than the kids. And I'm a little bit more, not more, but I'm a little bit concerned about the staff as well. And is there a way that we can, I don't know, maybe circumvent, you really can't circumvent, I guess, but is there a way that we can make people more comfortable about what's going on inside their bodies?
Great question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't reached out to them.
Oof.
So that I can reach out to them and see if that's something that they would be willing to do, and if that's something that we want to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody would be interested, but if there's somebody who'd be interested in that, then I'd like, I mean, as a school district, I'd like to, or as a board member, I guess, I'd like to have that support in place. And the other question I had was about sports. I mean, I presume that the sports have all been postponed in the second semester.
Yes. So if you on that, if you go back to the website, there were 3 there are two memos that came out, one in July 22nd, where they postponed for a month, and then August 5th, they've changed the calendar. And so what we have is, am I still screen sharing? I'm not good at Zoom, or am I just jabbering in front of you guys and just jibber jabbering?
Just jabbering, man.
Okay, I can roll with that. You know me, I'm good at that. What they did is they broke the year into what they're calling 4 seasons. And so season 1 runs from August 31st all the way through December 28th. And that's pretty much them extending summer rules but not having schools have teams. So if you can meet the state and OHA guidance about doing that, you can still hold workouts, practices. And some areas are talking about having competing with each other, like similar as like they would for like a summer league basketball. Some of that though, they're not going to be able to do because I think like football, wrestling are considered contact sports. So those will have to wait until they get from OSAA. I was on a call with OSAA today, and it's really interesting how different people are interpreting that first season. And OSAA is really saying, like, even though the practice participation rules have been removed, it doesn't mean go run out and do a lot of stuff with kids that isn't safe. The second season will run from December 28th through March 7th, which will be called season 2, and that will be your traditional winter sports. So swimming, wrestling, basketball, and it'll be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 week season with 1 week as a culminating week, and then 2 weeks of practice before. Season 3, there's a little bit of an overlap that will start February 22nd through May 2nd. And then the same setup with the same number of weeks with the 2 weeks of practice. Football is a little different. So the season 3 will be your primarily fall season sports. So cross country, volleyball, soccer, and football. Football will have a 3-week practice run up, and then they'll have each sport has what they're calling a cumulative event week, which they can't have the full state playoffs. So we'll see what they decide and plan for that cumulative week. And then season 4 is your traditional spring sports: golf, tennis, track, baseball, softball. Those will happen from April 19th through the end of June 27th.
Yeah. It's tough to predict into season, like even into season 2. But for season 1, it seems silly to me why we wouldn't let kids come to school to learn, but we would let kids practice together. And it would seem to me that we wouldn't be doing sports in season 1. And then as time goes on, if science comes up with the vaccines, and obviously that changes the game, no pun intended.
Yeah, and I agree with that. If we can't be on site to learn, being on site to practice, like not appropriate. But also, I think don't underestimate how powerful of a tool not just sports but other activities are to helping students stay engaged. And
absolutely,
we're gonna have a hard time hooking some kids without that carrot.
Yeah, that's why some of us went to school when we were younger. It was for sports, not for education. But I wouldn't want a kid to get sick on the field.
Oh no, because that would. So then there's also face masks, face coverings are required. You can't have some of the stuff they're talking about. You can't have indoor competitions. So like even if you did get enough kids together to want to do like volleyball, you would have to play sand volleyball. You have to be outside during that. Important part I forgot about that season 1 is if you do like those summer league type teams, You have to use OSAA refs. That might be a limiting factor for some things. They won't let you do, so like tackle football is a contact sport, so it's off, but then flag football and 7-on-7 isn't considered contact, and it's in that moderate range, but then you'd still have to use officials to do those things. So they're trying, and we'll see what happens when we get into the end of December. Hopefully we're back, and hopefully we're getting ready to get over to the new gym and get some popcorn and watch some basketball. But
Yeah. There's one last question.
sure.
So given that we're home on CDL, at least for the first month, and if it continues at CDL beyond that, I mean, do we have resources for kids who are feeling isolated, alone, anxious, all those kinds of issues? What can we do as a school district to help that set of kids?
So a couple things that come to mind is we'll have our new therapist through Orchid, Kelly Anthony. She'll be here, and she's expressed interest in reaching out to students and families that need support like that. We also still have our student support specialist, Peggy Campbell. She'll be able to reach out and help support students. And then also, like we talked about, if we get into it, and even in September, if we're noticing that we have a group of kids that would benefit from figuring out a way to get them on site and doing some socialization stuff, some work, we're allowed to do that with that limited on-site instruction, that exception 2 that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some ways, like we find that we have a group of kids who are really struggling that need to have some interaction. They can't get interaction. We can look about supporting those kids that way too. So that's an option. I don't know if that wouldn't be the first option to go with, but it's an option.
Cool.
Okay. Any other questions?
So when we start out the year, the distance learning, are you starting the food program like you did last year, or or is that going to be part of the plan?
Yeah, we're required to run food service regardless. And then even when we get into hybrid, we have to serve all of our students. So we're going to have to figure out logistics of, doing an on-site meal and then doing a delivery meal. And then we're still going through and making sure we're able to do the delivery like we were in the spring. So I think that's where we'll have, a lot of, classified staff we can pull in and tie in that way. Folks that would necessarily be working one-on-one with students, we can see we can get them in and helping with some of that as well.
You'll be juggling all kinds of things, Lane.
There's also, like, the cool thing is, like I said before, like, you guys have a great team here. So you've got, folks like Kelly, who is already researching ways to make it more streamlined. We're getting a packaging machine. So then she just has to put the food in the tray, seals it, and then that way, instead of making all these paper bags. So it's like, you have a lot of folks that are, in some places I've seen online where they see these challenges and they either get really negative and they don't try to build solutions. And you have a bunch of people who are excited about building solutions in a really dark time in our country right now. So, next time you see them, let them know that you appreciate all the extra time and hours that they're doing trying to get this thing off the ground, because they're doing great work. Yeah. Patience.
I just had a couple of things. I have a runny nose, not COVID. Sorry.
You're one of those baseline folks that we have to make an
Because Lacey keeps yawning and then I keep yawning and then it's just bad. So some questions and then some comments, Lane, for you. I really appreciate your perspective on the equity lens. So making sure that we're not discounting anyone or siloing any populations because of our own, for lack of a better word, ignorance, right? Because we don't know what we don't know. So I appreciate your keeping an eye on those things. Also, we've been having some meetings here with my employer about cybersecurity issues and Google. So I don't know if there's an opportunity if your IT department or you and your ODE efforts have seen some of the cybersecurity information as it relates to Google Classroom and distance learning for parents, that there's something you can share in some of the outreach that we're doing to our moms and dads at home that are also learning how this all works. The other thing was I'm hopeful that you're getting a lot of funding to support all of these efforts from the Corona relief funds, and focusing those on some of the janitorial services for the high touch areas for the coming months. It could change in October, and you could have a number of people on campus and using them to your benefit. There are many models around. Also, the community center, Upper McKenzie, I'm not sure if you noticed that. It came through on the bulletin board. The Upper Community Center is essentially becoming I would refer to it as a pod for kids to go and get learning. That's a great opportunity for kids to go have access to somebody. So that could help them potentially with their math homework. That's a great way to utilize some of our community members, some of the retirees maybe that are instructors or teachers that really want to help. And I know there are a number of them that already are vetted school volunteers that come and help with the reading program. So that I think is a great solution to what we're facing today. The other thing that I would say is the economic impacts are here. Unfortunately, we don't even know what we have on deck for us in a year. So the impacts to our revenue, both at the school and local government level, I think are going to be extensive. And I hope that, you know, in your new role here as the superintendent, you're keeping an eye on that. As I know in my role here, I've been trying to push my organization to apply for any and all grant funding that's available, because it too will dry up at some point, right? And looking for those projects that continue to boost economic impacts within our community. So if we have roads projects that we're essentially going to pull the project because funding's not available, maybe there's some grant funding we could find that could augment that loss. So we're still continuing to pump those dollars into our community by building that bridge or replacing that bridge. So
Yeah, so if you guys want, so yesterday there was the special session with the legislature. They had to plug a pretty substantial hole in the budget. They were able to commit to maintaining the state school fund at the level that it was at. High school success funding was at a full level, so that's what we've been using to build out CTE coursework. And then there was another pocket of money that they did. So we are receiving aid money through the ESSER, the ESSER grant. That was the federal economic relief, the government, the state government, so the legislature will be tapping into our economic stability fund in order to get us to the full state school fund amount. The other part that I was going to talk about was the SSA. So the SIA plan, all that we went through, that will be about a third of what they told us that they were going to give us. So we'll have to make some adjustments to that plan. Then the governor also used some of her emergency funding to do the comprehensive distance learning grant. So we'll have some money coming to support getting devices and getting things put into place so students can be successful with comprehensive distance learning. But yeah, it's going to be, because of so many jobs that have been lost, next biennium is going to be interesting. So then patients, if you want to connect me with your IT person about that Google, I can connect with Jason and we can get
Yeah,
that.
I'll forward you the FAQs.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, anybody have any other questions or comments?
Do we, I know our school board meeting is next Wednesday, correct? Do we do public comment during these online meetings?
So public comment, not a requirement for public meetings. What we could do is we can talk more if we wanted to have an email address or something where people can send in comment. We haven't just allowed folks to join the Zoom meeting because it's tough to manage beyond just us. That's something we can talk more about if you guys want to find other ways to increase engagement of folks. But really, the only requirement for public meetings is just that they're accessible to the public, which we're doing through having the YouTube live stream, because this is, meetings are meetings for you guys to do your business. And public comment is a courtesy that's usually allowed during those meetings, but it's not a requirement. But we can talk more about other ways if you want to get more engagement.
The reason I ask is we're gonna get prepared to go out for the bond. And we may have people that have comments that we would want to hear from the board.
There will be several opportunities, bond-specific opportunities for the public to ask questions and all that, get more information and all that between over the next, I guess, what is it now? Almost about 10 more weeks. So the bond committee is really moving forward with a lot of plans for that.
During the live YouTube stuff too, the comment section, if you have somebody watching it, you can have somebody relay those comments, if nothing else, if you don't want to have them in the actual Zoom meeting. So if that's a way to have the public, if you know that they're on the live stream.
Good point.
Alrighty then. Other comments, questions?
I want to say, I like Melissa's idea of using the chat. If people want to put comments there, I guess if they have to type, it'll be very specific and to the point.
Okay, so we have the school board meeting next Wednesday at 5:30. And you guys will be getting that agenda probably on Thursday or Friday, Lane, yeah? And then, and that's it. So anybody want to move to
Sure.
call this thing, what do you call that?
Adjourn.
Adjourn, thank you.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
All right, so James moved to adjourn. Alyssa seconded. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, Jason. And Lane, please thank all the team members for all the excellent work that they've been doing.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
See you next week.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. See you later.